Welcome to Williams and Bloom. It is not Sunday night. We've had a weird week as I was coming back from Orlando, got home at about 2:33 in the morning, and then Monday was just crazy with portal stuff and whatever. So here we are on Tuesday. The plan is to record Tuesday, and if we don't do Wednesday, it'll be Thursday. I think we may be doing Thursday this week. We'll see. Because there's a lot of moving parts. You guys have been watching the portal, and then Iowa State basketball has a game at DePaul on Friday. So that's what the week looks like for us on this specific podcast. Of course, all of our other great podcasts you can find on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network. We are presented, as always, by our friends at Mechdyne, the Mechdyne Corporation, MECHDYNE.com. A new year is nearly upon us. If you are wanting to change things up a little bit in your life, maybe attack a different type of career, go to mechdyne.com, see what they have to offer. They've got jobs not just in engineering, but they've got technology jobs. They've got IT jobs for even like college kids. You can get a part-time job at an IT desk where you can work remotely. They've got marketing jobs. Mechdyne.com, an incredible company. I love that company. The culture there is phenomenal. They've been very good to us here on the Cyclone Fanatic Podcast Network. Also want to thank our friends at Kelderman Manufacturing. Laser cutting season, baby. Laser cutting season. We already sold Kelderman a down corn reel from a farmer during harvest down there in Oskaloosa. If you're an engineer out there and you need any sort of laser cutting, these are your guys. Kelderman Manufacturing. They will take care of business for you. They're going to get it done at a better price for you. I've talked to these engineers, actually. They all need good laser cutters. Kelderman Manufacturing. Kelderman.com. I bring in Brent Blum, where we are remote this week. It's been a busy week already. But let's start. We haven't gotten to talk about the football game at all, where you were back in the booth for Snowmageddon with the Cyclone Radio Network. How are you, my friend?
Oh man, what a ride that was!
Woo!
That was an all timer. I mean, the stats alone, which you've
Well,
highlighted, are
jeez.
amazing. We're in the booth and we're literally when Sama gets pushed forward on that one play, I just start laughing. Like it was just one of those things where it's like, what else could happen? That was one, I saw some conversation of where does that rank in the all time Iowa State games from an entertainment value. It's right at the top. Now, meaning wise, it was super meaningful too. I mean, 7-5 looks so much better than 6-6.
Mm-hmm.
You got some momentum now headed to the offseason, headed to a bowl game. Is it as good as the Oklahoma win in 2017? I don't know, but
It
probably
was
not.
it was the most entertaining Iowa
It
State
was
win I think I've ever watched.
it was so entertaining and unexpected too. I don't Iowa State, at times, and you've highlighted it. Thankfully, it was so hard to play defense. Like
Yes.
it was so hard to play
I
defense that
couldn't
day. So
believe all these people on Twitter who were just killing the defensive. And I'm like,
you
guys, like that, you know how hard it is to have your footing when there's 7 inches of snow? And why do they not have snow removal equipment in Manhattan? What is the deal?
somebody floated to me that they thought K State, because K State's more of a power run team, that K State, I don't know, purposefully didn't go out of their way to remove the snow. Which I thought that's a little conspiracy theory-ish for me, but I don't know. They literally
Man, like,
they had one little tractor and a bunch of air blowers. That's what they had. It was crazy.
I loved you and Walter's pregame tweets. Well, because you got to realize I'm in Florida,
Yeah, I know.
right? So, and it was hot that day in Florida
Of
too, by
course.
the way. And I'm just watching these updates with like the palm trees in the background, and I'm like, holy shit, they haven't wiped out that field because most snow games you can still see the field because it's been cleaned off so
Yeah,
much,
or,
and that
or and it
wasn't, and it just kept piling up.
And in the NFL, like the Packers have a heated field, so it basically melts.
Yeah,
They had none of they just let it pile up. See up. It snowed 8 inches in Manhattan. They were expecting 3. So it caught everybody off guard. Like, I got to give them a little bit of grace
Yeah.
here. But there, I mean, it was wild. It you could not get a perspective unless you were on the field. There were 6 to 8 inches of snow on the ground, and it was crazy. But just to add to the weirdness of that day, which I tweet a little bit about, but I'm not sure the masses know. Iowa State's team catered meals at their hotel got hosed up somehow. I don't know all the details. And so they had to run to the Walmart in it wasn't in Manhattan, it was a nearby Junction, I think it was Junction City, Kansas. And they got a bunch of omelet mix. And Tyson Veit, the linebackers coach for Iowa State, was making omelets in the morning on Saturday morning. And then there was a nearby Subway, and that's where Iowa State went for lunch. All the guys went to Subway, which is way
How
atypical
does
for
that
a road
happen?
trip. I don't know. I don't know who. Again, I'm not blaming anybody. Again, weird things happen on the road, and so that happened. The game goes great. We get on the plane, and the Manhattan airport runs out of de-icer fluid. And our charter flight had literally the same 9 inches of snow built up on it, so they couldn't get the snow off. We were stuck on the tarmac for 3 hours while
With
they
all
tried
the
to with
all that mass in there.
all the mass. But even make it worse. Make it worse. When you're de-icing, apparently you have to turn the engines off. And so
Oh.
it felt 90 degrees in there. There was football players taking their shirts off, and you can imagine the aroma in that plane at that point.
Well,
And
because
everybody's
they just
getting
play the game.
frustrated. Yeah. So
Oh
it
my
was a
god!
trip, man. And so we finally got in it.
Thank
We
God you guys won.
Oh my gosh, if that was a loss, it would have been, I think there may have been a yeah, there, some frustration on that plane would have been, because you can't go anywhere. And to make it worse, there was one functional bathroom in this 200
Oh,
seat
thank
charter.
God.
It was terrible. It was terrible.
Who are you
But
sitting next? Were you with Walters?
I was with Walters and Rod Botholt, who's the nicest man
Okay,
on the
that
planet. So
makes it
I was
better.
good. Yeah, I was
You're
good.
not like tucked in with the offensive lineman.
No, I wasn't sitting next to like Tyler Miller or something. But those
Jared
guys up
Hufford
front,
and
the cycle players at the front, they were starting to get frustrated because then the poor flight attendants were like, guys, remain in your seats. And these guys were just like, no, we're not sitting down. It was, man, an all timer. Let me tell you.
again, thank God Iowa State won that game
No
because
kidding.
that would have been such a. So I'm with basketball,
Oh,
and
those flights are the worst after a loss.
well,
Just
I'm with.
terrible.
I was in. I was in the team room. It was like the morning after, and I was explaining to some people what had happened to you guys on the plane. And there was another conspiracy theory that was floated that was done purposely because Iowa State won.
I
There are some very, like, if you talk to the old timers who've been around the Big 12 for 20, 30 years, they totally wouldn't put it past like one town like doing that.
I do think I'm going to say the snow removal thing seemed a little odd to me. I think
Yeah.
the de-icer, I just don't think they were prepared for that much. Now, you would think Manhattan, Kansas would have de-icer fluid at their airport. I just
Well, you'd
maybe
certainly think that.
maybe they should invest in more a larger hose or
I
something.
didn't even think you guys would get out. I honestly thought it'd be
I
another
didn't either.
hotel night.
The problem is if we would have just taken the bus, we would have made it sooner from Manhattan than if we would have flown. But we got there and all is okay.
Well, and it's always one of those things too, because you're kind of like, yeah, this sucks, but you need the de-icer.
Right, right. That's what
You know
it's
what
like.
I
I'm not
mean?
complaining about it.
I'm always like that at an airport where I get really frustrated when my flight's delayed because of mechanical stuff. But it's like, well, it could be
The
worse.
alternative.
Yeah. I mean,
The funny part is the poor pilots, they're getting frustrated too because there's nothing they can control. And so they don't know what to tell everybody. So they kept saying, well, could be a few more minutes. And it's like, well, guys, apparently they ran out of de-ice fluid. And the guy's like, shh,
yeah,
blank.
you've got just
Yeah, you got angry
hundreds of
300-pounders.
huge people back here who are,
Right.
again, thank God you won.
Yes.
There's nothing worse. Like after that 21-point
Yeah, how
lead
long was
was
that flight from Orlando?
Jesus.
Going against the jet, the whatever, the jetway.
That
The jetway.
actually it was I'm not going to complain because these chartered flights are, but that's a long ass flight. When you
Yeah,
fly west
you're going into
on
the
a
wind,
prop
right?
plane, yeah, when
Yeah.
you fly west in a prop plane, like everything takes twice as long. But no, that there's few things worse than when you're the put a little insight for our listeners. When you're the radio guy after a bad loss, and then everybody's waiting for you on the bus, and you're the last person to get
Yeah,
on,
can
and
you
you're
imagine?
lugging, and they all roll their eyes at you,
Look
and
at
you
this
get on
guy.
there. It's just like, oh,
You're like, "I'm sorry." You want to just have a sign that says, "I'm sorry, it's not my fault."
yeah. I'm just trying to do what I'm here to do.
Yeah.
You guys play the game. I control the media part of it. They're all just like rolling their eyes at you, and it's just like, oh
Because they're
man.
counting down like, "Well, at this rate, we'll be in at 3 in the morning,
Yeah, and
we're in
like every
class."
minute you're late, their whole time thing's bouncing back, and they're all pissed because of the loss, anyways. And actually, men's basketball is great to travel with. I have Vic Miller and Micah Byers and those guys. It couldn't be better. It's like family. It really is. You can see why they have pretty good culture in that deal because the people are fantastic. Real quick on my deal, we'll get into these games.
Yeah.
I did talk to our guy Larry Eustace
Yes!
down there in Orlando. He was very kind. He kind of gave me a little hug. We didn't really get to sit down and talk too much because, believe it or not, there's a lot of work that is involved with 3 games in 4 days. And Larry's watching tape, and we were planning on it. The good thing is we did exchange phone numbers, so I'm very hopeful that Larry Eustace will be a friend of the program from here on out.
Man, I've had so much positive feedback. People like, "I wish you guys would have talked for 4 more hours," and it's like,
Well, I think we might be able to, Brent.
I
I think that
I
coach is open to this.
I I'm so happy. It was so fun. When I got that photo from you of him, I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Well,
it's Larry."
so we got done with the VCU game, and Boise was playing right after us, and because Iowa State would play the winner, and I was just looking, I'm like, where does Larry sit during the games? Because I was unaware of his actual like job, right? Like
Yeah.
I was like, is he just completely behind the scenes, or
Well,
no? He sits there right by Leon Rice and is just kind of his advisor,
wasn't who is Prome's guy? Prome had a guy like that.
David Hobbs.
Hobbs, yeah, his old coach at Bama.
Well, and isn't Eric Crawford the essentially the same thing
Yes, because
now?
Crawford can't recruit, but he's doing
Correct.
although, I don't know if Crawford's advising as much as doing skill development, so it's a little bit different, but
So actually, I was told I got a little insight that Crawford TJ told me I was on the radio about Crawford really being the key to Lipsy's improvement. He gave him a lot of that credit as far as that goes.
man,
So
that guy was so g I Taman is just a complete warrior, my gosh. I thought he wasn't the amount of times that guy hit the floor, I was like,
I
"Geez,
worry
don't
about
get
him,
hurt.
Brent.
Yeah, don't get hurt, man, like, we need you."
I really do. Every time he hits the deck, I like the I will say this after watching 3 games in 4 days, they can't play him 35 minutes every time out.
No, no, that's no, I think that's pretty clear. Now, it's a little bit easier when you get those 3-day breaks in conference
Correct.
play,
I
but
think
it's
he'll benefit from those.
in a tournament setting, it's really hard, and I thought he wore down a little bit, I mean, as much as Taman can in that second half of the A&M game, and I think it hurt him a little bit.
I thought Taman really struggled in the Virginia Tech game. He had 5 turnovers, which is just that doesn't happen with him. Here's my theory on Taman. He's clearly the best player on the team. Okay. Maybe not the best scorer. That's Momcilovic at this point. He's the best player on the team. The most valuable player is Taman Lipsy. I think what we saw was him trying to do more than he probably should be doing in
That's
that
fair.
game.
That's
I
fair.
think he saw everybody else like they were struggling so mightily. I think Taman realized they missed 17 shots in a row the night before, and I think he tried to like just do a little bit too much. And hopefully, even for him, it's all a learning process. My quick analysis of basketball. It looked to me, and Milan and I talked about this quite a bit. A bunch of guys who had never played that level of competition before, from the
Mhm.
freshmen to even the difference in the transfers this year compared to the last few years is stark only in the sense that they're mid-major guys, right? Like Keyshawn Gilbert has not played competition like that regularly. Curtis Jones is not, like that type of deal. And it looked like they were playing up a level, and it looked like the game was going really fast for them to me. And now it's like you hope they learn from it. You hope that it continues to slow down. I still think they're good basketball players. Like
I do too.
my opinion on these guys hasn't really changed too much. Now, like where do I see their roles fitting? That's certainly developing. And I wrote on the flight back on Sunday night, I wrote 1,500 words for our premium subscribers. Never been a better time to be a premium subscriber, by the way, for all sorts of stuff going on. But yeah, like their roles, I think are evolving. I still think that all of them, you know, I'm not tapping out on this season. It was also a deal too where it was just the most maddening game sprint because it's like if you are just decent from the free throw line, you're going 2-1.
Yep.
You know, you're going to win one of those games.
Yep.
So it was a frustrating week, but I could tell you that there wasn't a lot of panic inside that locker room. There's urgency, I know, from the coaching staff because they realize, you know, the cushion and NCAA tournament and all that stuff is kind of it's not gone. I still think if you beat Iowa and DePaul, you kind of held your own in the non-con. You and me both thought this team would be not as good in November as the last two. We said that all summer. I think that's coming to fruition despite the monster wins over the cupcake teams. But those really don't mean anything as far as where the team's going to be in March. I still think if you win these next two, you're in
sure.
pretty decent shape going into the conference league.
I agree. I mean, you look still at the metrics. I would say it's 27th in Ken Palm. You know, it's not like those were bad quad losses down there. I mean, the A&M. The problem is the A&M win would have looked really good,
That's the
and
issue. And they
and
were depleted, and you had a great
correct,
opportunity.
and nobody would have known that in March. And so
Correct.
it's just like that was one where it got away from you that would have really helped. That game could be the difference between a seed line, unfortunately. But
I said that to Hassel yesterday. I said that's the difference between a 5 and a 4,
it could
probably.
be. It could be, but that doesn't. I think with this team, it was a good adjustment of, okay, I think Iowa State's more talented than the last 2 years. There's no question. But there are the intangibles when you play up, and it was a huge learning curve for a lot of those guys. And even in that VCU game, that first half was like, oh my gosh, these guys are all 6'8". You know, this isn't Lindenwood anymore.
Mhm.
And it was an adjustment. That's exactly the right word. I still think this team's upside is still higher than the past 2 years. What they need to figure out though, that got a little wonky in every game, was the scoring drought issue.
Yeah.
Um, y-
We thought
what?
they were past that. We both
Yeah,
did,
we
and
did.
they're clearly not.
So it's a couple things in my opinion. Number one, simply free throws. Okay, that helps. And then I mean, Curtis Jones, his reputation is as a shooter. He's got to make shots. I don't say this to be negative towards Curtis, but of all of the NCAA players right now that have 30 or more attempts from three, he has the lowest percentage made.
He's an
He's
analytical nightmare right now.
he's just not, and defensively he's giving you a lot. I mean, I think people don't appreciate about Curtis is he's a really good defender, and so
They
he
don't win
provides
that game
value.
against VCU without him.
But I think you'll
That's why he
start to
played
see,
28 minutes.
yeah, no, he's really good. I think people see the several missed shots like, well, why is he in there? He does a lot of good stuff beyond that. He's a good rebounder. He's good defensively. But the point blank, Iowa State needs somebody to put the ball in the basket. And, Keyshawn Gilbert can drive it against those smaller teams. When he's going against length, 6'9", 6'8", 6'7", it's harder for him to do that. Now, he got to the line a bunch in VCU and it worked, but he's got to be more under control. Same with Taman. It's a lot easier to do against those smaller schools. And so my opinion, C-Dub, if I have a takeaway from that game, those games down in Orlando, is you need Momcilovic to be more of the center of the offense and work a lot more stuff through him. I think he has proven that he can be a guy that can get you a basket. Keep in mind, and they brought Niang up a lot on the TV broadcast, George did not start his freshman year until the second game of conference play. So Milan is really good. He's still learning. And so I don't know if you just want to throw him directly into the fire, but it's clear that if you need a basket, I think he's your guy that can break a drought. And then secondly, Trey King's just got to play better. I mean, you just need your 24-year-old has to be more of a threat than he was down in Orlando. He's fighting an ankle injury. I understand it. You just need some sort of ability to work the ball inside out. I don't ever think this is an Iowa State team that's going to make 10 threes consistently. So you got to have that threat at the basket a little bit more. And I think the talent's there though. The question is, what's the rotation look like going forward? Clearly against VCU and Virginia Tech and A&M, Iowa State missed Hassan Ward's length.
Yeah,
That would have
no
really helped
doubt.
at the rim. But you learn from it, and these two games to Paul and I will become not must wins because you're going to have so many opportunities in the Big 12, and quite frankly, Iowa State's numbers, their RPI, their KenPom, if you go 9-9 in the conference, you're still going to make the tournament. But you start talking about seeding and upside and all this stuff, and
That's the deal.
yeah, it was an opportunity lost. It's not the end of the season. I think in a way, this could be it's not the same, but it could be the Ohio game that the football team had of, all right, can't just show up and things are going to be okay. You're going to have to find ways to lock in at all times. And if your shot's not falling, you cannot have the defensive breakdowns that Iowa State had at times, the end of the first half against A&M, like they did against Virginia Tech. You still got to be really locked in on that end. But again, I'm not selling this team at all. I think the guys are there and they'll learn from this. And it's a long season. What I would say is I think my perspective on basketball has changed quite a bit since I've started following the NBA more religiously. It's a long season. You're going to have nights. You're not going to win every game. You want to win the games when you're up 20. I get that, but
Yeah.
as long as you respond and bounce back, and this team feels pretty together for me. There's not like fractures in the locker room or anything over this thing. They're going to be okay. They just got to find more
No,
reliable offense, and I think you lean into Momcilovic even more. I really do. I think
well,
that guy has so much ability. But like he told you, right? They're starting to scout him. He's never been scouted before, so
yeah.
they're going to start taking some of his stuff away. I think he's got the ability though to you could run stuff through him and let him be the focal point.
And he told me after the what game? The second game, the Vatek game. He told me that he kind of put a lot of it on himself at the end because he's like, I need to hunt shots more. They're telling me to.
Yep, they're
My
telling that
coaches want me to shoot it, and I think he had a good learning weekend, knowing that okay, yeah, I know I'm a freshman, and this isn't really my team or whatever, but this is I'm our best scorer, and in order for us to win, I need to be hunting shots more.
Yep,
And
that's exactly it.
I think that was a good takeaway from him, and hopefully, you know, Nate Schmidt's a really good offensive guy, and I know he's working with Milan a lot, and they can show him some stuff. And we'll see. I'm not panicking. It was disappointing to blow a 21-point lead. Like
For
that
sure,
sucked.
for
The
sure.
Vatek game was, I don't know, like a little bit weird because they were just so good that night, and I thought Ward too. If Ward's there, or you're decent from free throws, you're at least 2-1 in that thing. But coulda, shoulda, woulda, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's just you learn from it. I mean, this is why these tournament. And if you should have Iowa State played a tougher schedule going into that, perhaps. But
Maybe.
it's really hard to
But
nitpick about that.
the reason you're in an analytical spot that you are is because you beat all those teams by 40 points. Like
Right.
it's kind of the way the
Exactly.
whole thing's set up. Blame that, not the staffs that are putting these schedules together.
Yep. Yep. And I think and Iowa State played Creighton and Northwestern, two high major teams, and played well in the non-conference. I just wonder if the competition slipped so much that it was
Yeah,
hard to get back up to speed. And then when
no
you hit
doubt.
yeah, when you hit adversity for the first time, it was like, oh man, this is what high major basketball is.
Even VCU, they're just so long and athletic, and you could just tell that Iowa State's guys were getting into the lane. Like Gilbert, for instance, like it just felt like Brent. He was doing what he was. They want him to attack. They want him to get to the free throw line. They want
Absolutely.
all these things, and he did for the most part in that game. Goes 12 of 15 from the line. Big reason Iowa State won it. But it felt like in the first half, and then much of the other games where he was just going in the lane and he was seeking contact more than he was trying to score the basket.
Yes.
And so that's a thing. It's just like slow down. down you have the talent to do this, and take a deep breath, and hopefully they go out and they're going to catch a really struggling DePaul team. We'll do more on that game later in the week in
Yeah.
our second
And then
podcast.
one quick, because I've got a lot of it, what's going on with Omaha? And I just, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know the exact answer. It seems that he's just not ahead of some of those other guys yet. And, I'd be interested if I think what fans would want to know is, and be curious to get TJ's take, how up to speed can you get when you're getting, these 90-second, 2-minute bursts? You'd almost like to play them in longer stretches, but at the same time, if those stretches are going the wrong way, and other guys are being more productive, then you can't leave them in there. So I get it, but it's Omaha is key for Iowa State's upside, and so you're going to have to find a way, I think, to get him a little bit more in the flow. He's got offensive game too. It's just get him in the right spot, get him to calm down. And for all those guys, this is your first test against really, really good players, night in and night out. And it's Iowa State learned a lot about what his team is, and now you take those lessons and you adjust going forward.
The final note was Pavlovsky getting a lot more run, so that's
Great.
encouraging. I would add with Pavlovsky, and we started to see this, and I'm confident he's only going to get better. If he's in the game, like he's got, like if he can be a consistent 3-point threat, along with Momchil, like that, that's such a big deal when you look at the makeup of this roster. Because going into it, I'm like, well, man, like, well, if Gilbert's having an off night, like Jones can step up, or it's like you got more options now and warm bodies. What I saw from Jackson is, okay, this is like another actual offensive threat
Yes.
that Iowa State can have, and he plays pretty good defense from what I've been able to see. He's not
He's
perfect yet,
feisty. He's
but
not big, but he
yeah,
fought.
it feels like he's in the right spot more often than not. So that was encouraging. I don't think Iowa State's season's going to be made or broken by Pavlovsky, but it's an option. And again, I'm looking if this team is going to have these scoring droughts, which is disappointing because I thought we were kind of past that as the program goes, but maybe not. Then to have other people to try and just get in there to spice things up, and I thought Pavlovsky showed some
He did.
real energy off the bench for Iowa State.
He did, and I think it's going to be interesting going forward. I've seen looked at it a couple times. They went super small at
Yes, they
times in
did.
that, and I think if your offense is struggling like it had been against A&M, going small can be an option because the issue you're having right now, and it's not their fault, but when you have Trey King and Rob Jones together, it just things get really congested real fast.
Rob looks out of size. He looks undersized against those high majors at the 5.
Yeah, but he also he's not a shooter, and
Right.
Trey has Trey made a 3 yet? Like
No, he attempted one in Orlando and he missed it.
you gotta if things are struggling offensively, you gotta spread it out and then drive it because Keyshawn's not much of a 3-point shooter either. And so I think, even playing some Chilovich at the 4, maybe even some at the 5, and you get Pavlovsky in there along uh, with Jones and having 3 shooters on the floor at the same time can open things up because what I always ran into is coaches that really did a good job of scouting them and took away some of their stuff. And so it's now what do you do? How do you adjust to that? And that separates the good from the great teams is when I take away your stuff, what's options 2 and 3? And against those smaller schools, I always say didn't have to go to options 2 or 3. Against the big schools, you do. And that's where you find your counters. And that's the next question for Iowa State.
All right, we'll get on to some football. We'll do our Wiffles hybrids Big 12 segment coming up, or we're going to talk about some of these portal moves that we've seen in the Big 12 and Iowa State's from Monday. We don't want to date this too much because it's just these guys are going to keep trickling, not just from Iowa State, but from all over the country. And we'll try and keep you updated as much. Connor Ferguson's doing a good job. He's got like a portal tracker going on our front page as far as Iowa State's guys. You can go and keep refreshing that if you don't want to screw with Twitter and sifting through all of that stuff. I want to thank our buddy Colin Newell. I'm meeting with him because I'm like any of you. When the new year comes around, you try and find some ways to save some money. Colin's going to save me some money with Farm Bureau Insurance Agency. I got him all my documents. The process is in place, Brent. So I will. Don't be a fool. Go with Newell, Farm Bureau Financial Services, and also our great friends out there in the world of agriculture. If you are a farmer and you've been thinking about getting into the drone technology for your fields, I would like to introduce you to our friends from Terraplex Ag. Terraplex Ag, it's a good local company, quality local company, but they are blowing up. They are blowing up on this in this area of the country because in 10 years, every farm's going to have these drone sprayers and whatnot. Like they're going to be everywhere. Don't let your farm get behind. I want to get you in contact with my friends from Terraplex today. They can help you. They'll train you. They'll do all this stuff. They're a fantastic company that I've enjoyed learning a lot about.
Terraplex should look into drone de-icing technology because that would have been clutch. I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the hoses on those drones could be, but man, I would have taken about anything when we're sitting there on the tarmac with no internet too. That was the other brutal part.
What do you mean you didn't have internet?
Oh, yeah, there's so many people on their phones. Like it was like slow.
It slowed down the cell service.
Slow down the cell save. It's just
Yeah.
I know.
Again,
First world
thank
problem.
God it was after a win.
Yes.
Like
There would
I'm
have been a
telling, like
revolt. There would have been
if
there would have
if
been
it
a
would have
revolt on the play.
if Iowa State would have lost that game, it would have been the single most miserable moment of your life. I'm not kidding.
It's been some bad ones,
You've
including
got
in
like
Manhattan before. Yeah.
you've got like an angry, shirtless Dominic Orange, a couple rows ahead of you.
I swear, I don't know if he was one without a shirt. There were several football players without shirts.
You've got Tyler Onyedum just oh, brutal. So thank you to our friends of Wiffles Hybrids. They always bring us our Big 12 segment. We'll do this during basketball season too, of course, with Wiffles Hybrid. Plant your independence. Plant Wiffles. Thanks to them for being a part of the network and supporting us here on Williams and Blum. You mentioned Will Howard, Kansas
Yeah.
State's quarterback. Kansas State lost a lot of guys on Monday. The one that kind of surprised me was Blake Shapen. I thought that he may be a Baylor lifer, but apparently he's not. So just to update, Dana Holgerson's been fired at Houston. The other move in the Big 12 we thought could happen was Baylor, and they're going to give Dave Aranda another year. I think that's the right move. I've been saying that for a month. That guy,
they gutted his staff, but
they're going to give him another shot. At least the Shapen one surprised me more. I don't know what's behind him. Baylor is a place that could go out and buy a quarterback. I think if they needed to.
Well, interestingly,
What do you think of these?
what they referenced in it wasn't in the official statement, but what they told Pete Thamel, who's kind of the breaking news guy for all this stuff, is that as part of retaining Aranda, is they promised Aranda that they would dedicate a lot more resources to NIL. You're seeing this now. Like if you look at these, when Jeff Lebby gets introduced at Mississippi State, C-Dub, he comes off the plane in their collective windbreaker. Like that was what he was wearing. And immediately the first thing he says is we need to invest in NIL. A lot of these coaches are getting guarantees within their contracts of schools will help procure X amount in NIL. So it's becoming a larger part of all these conversations. The Indiana coach gets fired, and he says the number one thing I would have requested is to get more support for NIL. And so it's, I mean, again, not to hit the panic alarm, but it's becoming a huge part of program building in general.
If you're not doing it, you're going to lose.
You're going to lose.
It's plain and simple.
Yep.
And anybody who doesn't understand that, you're behind the times. It doesn't mean this is a great system that we have right now, but there's a reason all these people in power are saying the same thing.
Correct. Exactly. Well said.
So Shapen's out. Will Howard's
out. Yep.
Howard deals. I mean, they're going on to that kid who Avery Johnson, who's an absolute stud behind him. So no panic here for Kansas State.
But you're hearing for Howard, Notre Dame potentially for him.
Well,
so I mean, you're talking about a kid from Pennsylvania, had a really good numbers, and Notre Dame's going to be in this situation almost every year now.
Just
They
go out and
bought.
get a new quarterback.
They're just going to go get a new quarterback, and that's what some of these programs are going to do. They're not. They're going to stop. They're not going to stop entirely, but they're like the Yankees. You can develop a freshman, or you can just go get a guy that's already made with your NIL dollars. And in particular, C-Dub, the quarterback market is out of control. It's
Mm-hmm.
out of control, but it makes sense. Look at the NFL. Who are the highest paid players in the NFL? The quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's the most important position on the field? The quarterback. So the quickest way for these schools to get a jump start is to get a ready-made quarterback. And so that's why I'm afraid you're going to see more and more of these quarterbacks just go into the portal and
And
see
see
what's
what they
out
can
there,
get.
see what they can get.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm not surprised for Howard and
It's
Chapin.
it's
Now,
free agency with no rules.
exactly, and
There's
so I
no
think
salary cap. There's no you can tamper whenever you want. There's just no rules.
that's the one position where there is a premium and the dollars are real. So, like you saw the Miami quarterback went in. You saw it's gonna. You saw the A&M quarterback go in again for the third time. So you're gonna see more and more of these because people are accustomed to that's the reality of where the numbers are for that position. It's if you look at rankings for NIL just to get in the nitty gritty, it's quarterback, then it's offensive and defensive linemen, and
Mm-hmm.
then the rest. Honestly,
Just like the NFL.
just like the NFL.
Unless you're Justin Jefferson or like a total
Yeah. If you're Jordan
freak.
Addison, one of those
Yeah.
guys at USC, sure, but there's not that many guys like that.
Yeah. And
But
I mean, you even look at running back. So Iowa State loses Sanders and Norton,
Yep.
which is not a surprise after everything that went down last week. And it's like, oh, okay, we got a true freshman. We'll plug him in. And the reason Iowa State, like Abu Sama gets a ton of credit, but Iowa State's O line was dominant in that game on Saturday. They dominated.
and the tight ends.
Yes. That entire group was just dominant. And, Sama benefits greatly from a snow game and that dominating performance by the offensive line. But again, as far as the running backs go, it's like Sanders and Norton leave, and people are just kind of like, oh, man, well, we wish him the best. Nobody really, like Greg Gaines is once the most talked about guy on National Signing Day, and he's got like 2 career catches, and people are, it is so much like the NFL. It's crazy, like where people want to spend money and stuff, and it's not generally a running back type deal. And if you're a slot receiver, like you get, but yeah, I don't even know what to say. Like it's wild to just sit back and watch it. I wish I don't want your job, but I would love to be a fly on the wall, just following you around this time of
Well,
year.
a lot of sleepless nights at the moment. I will say, I think it's interesting. You look across the nation and what's happening, and it's there. These conversations are very much alive and well, and that's why we've been hard on trying to raise funds about where we're at. Some positions they're just hard to find, and so that's where there's a premium on those spots. I do feel we've made a lot of progress, C-Dub, from where we were a year ago, so that's great, and I think we're at least in the conversation for our peers, in the Big 12. But are we where the SEC and the Big 10 schools are? Probably not. And so that's where it gets difficult. So it's two things. The culture at Iowa State is really good. And so if you can at least be in the ballpark with some of these guys, you hope they see that the grass isn't always greener somewhere else. And their coaches are great. And Iowa State has a chance to be really good next year. So that's a positive. But it's a crazy time. There are no rules. There are no salary caps. And some of these big time schools are loaded for bear, for lack of a better term. Like they are. What's the best way to win more games when you're going 4-8 and 5-7? Find more talent, and that's what they're doing. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of weeks.
Let me tell you what they're doing. They're
I feel
doing
okay with where we're at, but I don't know. It's hard to know.
They're doing the same thing that Iowa State basketball does. So Iowa State basketball, like will from time to time get poached by Texas or Duke or whatever, like going forward. But Iowa State replaces its poaching from going to VCU and going to, successful mid-major programs. And that's what's going to happen here, where the SEC and the Big Ten are going to target, Big 12 programs and find like the best players from that league and try. That's where they're going to want to get transfers from. And then I truly think that it will come down to like if you're Iowa State or Baylor or Kansas State, it's like you start going to the top FCS leagues or the MAC. That guy was a pretty good wide receiver from the MAC. We can get him on the cheap because you can get charter flights now as opposed to
Something to that.
busing for 6 hours. And like it's a real thing.
The
I
issue,
talked to Shun about that last year. Like
Yep.
he's like, oh man, we get charter flights. Yeah, all the time. That's just how it is here.
And playing time still matters too. So that's the other part. Now that's why I say that there's going to be more movement in the portal for Iowa State. Just by it's a numbers game. Okay, so Iowa State signed what was it, 18 freshmen in this class, and I think only had, or maybe it was 20. I don't know what the exact number was, but it had only 13 seniors, 12 seniors. So you will see attrition just naturally. Not everybody that goes in the portal is NIL. Like we got to get away from that too.
In fact, the majority are not.
Majority are not. But I think Iowa State fans are smart. You will know what ones are NIL and what ones aren't. And we have yeah.
Did you see he's leaving Ole Miss again?
I did. And so that's like things like that. The grass, I'm sure Ishim got a bump in compensation, but now he's, I don't know where he's going to end up. So these guys are smart. Like you got to make an educated decision. Money isn't everything, but it's who am I to say, a 19, 20, 21-year-old, $500,000 difference. That's hard to why. It's a lot of difference. So it's an interesting time. It's going to be stressful in the next 2 weeks. And the other thing, C-Dub, is it's a sprint. It's only 30-day window. It used to be a 45-day window. And so not only are these programs going to try and get new coaches in place really fast, but you have to not only retain your guys, but then also look at what else is out there at the same time. It is craziness. At least the NFL has it segmented where you have free agency, then the draft, then you can bring in non-roster invitees. This is all happening in a 30-day sprint. While you're still trying to sign that winter recruiting class too. So it's not much sleep in that Bergstrom complex right now.
Yeah, no, it's a weird time. We're all kind of learning all this stuff together, and we appreciate honestly, it's great to have you as my co-host because you can kind of teach us. The one thing from last week that I thought a lot of fans missed the boat on, and I understand why they would, when you see Drew Rosenhaus's name next to Iowa State players.
Yes, thank you for bringing this up.
Yeah, so I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I asked some people about this, and like it was a total overreaction by the fan base because what this is these professional agents. There's not much money in college athletics for them. So let's say a player like is going to get paid $1 million, and that's like the high end player. Okay, that's like if maybe not Caleb Williams, a perfect example, but just short of him would go transfer somewhere and get paid $1 million.
Yeah, your high end quarterbacks. That's generally the ballpark.
In Drew Rosenhaus's world, that's nothing. He's not making any money on that. Like I saw a bunch of people like, oh, new revenue stream. Like, no, it's really, they're not going to put their time into that. They want Jeremiah Cooper so that when he goes pro and gets drafted, which he will, and signs his first NFL contract, that he can be a Rosenhaus client. That's what they're doing. Am I right? That's how I comprehend all this.
Yes, and sure, and then the guy. Why? So then you might ask, well, then why are Jeremiah and Jalen Knoll signing with him to begin with? Well, those guys have contacts that, quite frankly, the We Will Collective with our deals with Iowa Pork and some of the other places don't. So if you're going to go to the NFL, you want that relationship already in place. It makes the transition so much easier. So you're dead on. Back in the day in the AAU basketball world, you'd have these agencies have shoe deals with AAU programs just for that same reason, because you get in the door with these guys before they're even ready. So it makes that decision a lot easier. That whole Adidas scandal was all based on signing guys for their eventual pro prospects, not because of they're in college. So yes, it's really a way for those guys at very little cost to have these relationships already with a high level company like Rosenhaus, and it makes sense for them. It makes sense for Rosenhaus. So that way, when they do become NFL players, it's less of a task to get up to speed and figure out all the mechanics of signing with an agency,
Yeah.
working
You
out, and
just
all those
go.
things. You just go. So I mean, it makes a lot of sense. And honestly, I've just to tell the fan base, 90%. It's 90% of your top 100 basketball players in high school already have agents. So this isn't new. I mean, this has happened. Half of Iowa State's basketball roster has an agent. It's coming to football more and more, especially for those NFL type guys, because it makes
Yeah.
sense. I mean, if you're going to be making millions of dollars, you want representation. That might
Yeah.
not be in college, but it's in the NFL.
And in basketball, more of these guys go pro, even if it's in Europe. Like it's
Exactly.
still that's where it benefits these agencies. Like I can promise you, whoever represents Momchilovich right now is
And
not making a ton commission on Milan right now. It's you're banking on him being a first round pick, and then you're his representative.
and he has an agent, and for
Yeah,
a good reason.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's
I'm
Jelani
actually glad
Hamilton.
he's
Jelani Hamilton has an agent, Cedar. Like it's everybody has an agent. It makes sense. It makes sense to have an agent if when you're dealing with the type of money that could be on the table for these guys.
good stuff. Last but certainly not least, I want to thank our friends at the Ivy College of Business. Bloom, you know all about our friends at the Ivy College of Business.
I'm going up there
Dean
today.
Spalding. You're gonna go see Dean
I'm
Spalding?
going to see my guy Dean Spalding. Say hello to him. Yeah,
Oh, that's
he's the
cool.
best.
Tell him I said hi.
I will do that.
Do me a favor and ask Dean Spalding. Hey, say Williams wanted me to ask you if you looked at the price of Bitcoin lately.
Okay, I will do that. That'll
So
be my
everybody,
first topic of conversation.
Dean Spalding and I have this long going thing where he's a Bitcoin skeptic, and I wouldn't even say I'm a believer, but I think it has a place in everybody's portfolio, and we always are going back and forth about that.
It's the great
But
thing with the
he's
Ivy
much
College of
smarter
Business.
than
Yeah. And Dean Spalding, they're making time for even little guys like me. No, I'd
me.
say I worked for people know the Ivy College of Business for 7 years. Literally, maybe the favorite place I've ever worked. Great leadership, honestly, great culture in that college. And the best way
Yeah.
to increase your lot in life is to get an education, especially a business degree. Can't
You're
beat it.
telling me that you didn't have to put up with this type of shit transfer portal season when you were at College of Business?
No, the most dramatic thing was making sure Dean Spalding had a ride to the airport. That was a little bit
Oh,
easier to manage.
well, I'm sure you did that quite well. I'm sure you did that quite well. Uh, we're not, so we're remote, and it gives us all sorts of problems. We are not going to guess the point spreads for this weekend because I can't play Benny Hill, and without Benny Hill,
It's not the
there's
same.
just there's just no point. But we'll do that. We got bowl season coming up. God, the bowl games this year. I mean, what do you rate Kansas State at without Will Howard? Where do you
Yeah.
power rate? Like it's wild. Like Miami without Tyler Van Dyke and like whatever. Point being, it's going to be wild, these bowl games. We do want to thank our friends at Webwise. They bring us guess the point spreads each and every week. Try webwise.com. I'm just going to read you the interesting ones here, Bloom. We can do more on these championship games this week.
But real quick on the bowl games,
Yeah,
I have no idea.
where we're going.
Yeah, I
We
would
we are going. We are planning to do a charter together if it makes sense.
if it makes sense. The Liberty Bowl would not probably do it. I don't know. We'll see. We'll
Unless we
talk.
do a bus.
Unless we
Tweet
do,
at us
yeah.
if you would want to get on a bus. I'm not riding a bus.
I'm not gonna rate
But
a bus.
we did
So,
that last time where we offered it and we filled up a bus
okay. Okay. We maybe
because
will.
there's a lot of older people and stuff who would totally
The-
jump at something like that.
here's my thought, just real quick. I do not want to go to Memphis and play Memphis again. I just
No.
It sounds like that's who it might be. I love Memphis. I love
Would
the
you
town.
rather go to the Independence Bowl? I'd love to go to
No.
Shreveport. I think it'd be great. I've always
Do
wanted to do that.
you know what you do in Shreveport?
Scamble, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
You'd
What a
be
horrible
fine.
thing.
You'd be fine. Others would not be.
I'm gonna sit and play blackjack. Oh, that sounds awful.
So I think the
What day
lowest
is that?
Iowa State wouldn't drop there. I think the lowest Iowa State would get to would be Phoenix.
See, I don't want that game. That
Play
game would suck.
Minnesota. You'd play 5-7 Minnesota in that game.
I don't care about the opponent. I don't want to play the day after Christmas.
Yeah. I get it.
That sounds terrible.
We'll know on
There's
Sunday.
no way I'm leaving my little girls on Christmas. There's no chance.
I would say that, yeah, I think the Alamo Bowl is probably a stretch. I don't think it's going to happen.
Unless Texas makes the playoff, which
yeah, and you got a lot of things got to go your way. I do think Pop-Tart Bowl is still potential in Orlando. But if I'm ranking them right now, C-Dub, I'm saying Liberty 1, Houston 2, Phoenix 3 in likelihood.
I would say Liberty feels like the most likely.
Agreed.
God, and those Liberty Bowl people are going to do anything to get Iowa State.
Oh, yeah, but Houston might beat them to the punch. Houston gets to pick first.
And that's on the 27th.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Iowa's a 23.5-point dog to Michigan. I would play Michigan there.
I'm gonna reserve comment.
Oregon is a 9.5-point favorite over Washington.
That seems like a lot, but they're a playoff team right now. I think if they win that
game, a lot, but it's also like it's that number for a reason.
Yeah,
like
that's a sucker bet.
It is. That's one that everybody will just say like, you should probably just bet Washington and take the points. For maybe smarter to go the other way. Same with this one. Oklahoma State 15-point dog to Texas in the Big 12 game. I would take the points here. Because Gundy's got that running back. He can just
they can try.
He can say, I'm going to do nothing. But you can't run on Texas.
Can't run on Texas. I'm
Georgia, Alabama.
I like Texas in that game, by the way.
5.5 Georgia over Alabama. I'd probably play Bama. I'd take the points.
Yeah. I don't know. I'll be watching it.
Tulane is a 5.5-point favorite over SMU. Roll wave. Last but certainly not least, the Seminoles of Florida State. What a tragic story with Jordan Travis going down. This was a team that could have won a national title. I don't think they would have, but with that quarterback, they had a shot. They're only a 2.5-point favorite over Louisville in the ACC championship. Is there a game here you're looking forward to the most?
Well, Bama, Georgia.
I thought you were going to say Iowa, Michigan.
Well, for other reasons.
I'm just goading you into.
I am. What would happen if Michigan actually stole Iowa's signs?
Somebody made a joke about this the other day. It was the joke was punt. It was like Harbaugh with these binoculars. It was hilarious, and it was Brian Ferentz with a chalkboard, and it just said the word punt.
Which isn't a bad idea. Did you see the punt guys? That was the highlight of the punt guys in the Nebraska-Iowa game. There was 2 guys in the stands that they kept showing that just had the word punt. I hope they show up to wherever that game is. No, as somebody I was talking to a friend of mine, and he's like, hey, what they're not saying about this Iowa quarterback is he's a system quarterback. I was like, oh yeah. He's like, the problem is the system's really shitty. I was like, okay, maybe chuckle.
All right, get out of here.
Yeah, I'm going. Hey,
Wednesday or Thursday, we're going to do the second show. We'll talk about it. Probably wait until Thursday. I think it makes more sense.
And I just want to thank everybody for your support of We Will. Obviously, like we talked about, it is a critical time. We're very mindful of your support and appreciative, and I do think we're going to be okay. But the more, the better at this point.
He is Brent Blum. My name is Chris Williams. We appreciate our sponsor, Mechdyne. Signing off from the Wild Rose Casino Studios. Of course, we're always fueled by Cody Road here on Cyclone Fanatic.